Okay, welcome back. We will now begin our cybersecurity panel, which will be moderated by Mr. Shernon Osepa, and he will introduce our panelists to you.
Okay, first of all, I didn't mention it, but point of clarification, because someone asked me in the break, are you from Nigeria? So I'm not from Nigeria, but I think it was one ship coming from Africa, and it dropped all of us on all these different islands and territories, but I'm not from Nigeria, okay? So I have that last name, Osepa. I think it's from Ghana, but I'm not from Nigeria. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're going to have this panel, or this session, whereby we will be focusing on cybersecurity. Nowadays, the whole world is talking about cybersecurity, so it's very important. And basically, we're not talking about cybersecurity for the sake of cybersecurity, but we would like to achieve something much bigger than cybersecurity itself, which is, for example, develop an internet economy in a given country or territory. So we have some very knowledgeable, let's say, panelists, and with them we're going to discuss cybersecurity, let's say, generally speaking, but especially focusing what is going on in Guyana and also in the region. So I have my good friend here, Mr. Bevel Wooding. He is the director at CaribNOG, among others things that he is doing. But let's just maintain our director at CaribNOG. And then we have Muriana McPherson. She's a cybersecurity manager at National Data Management Authority here in Guyana. And then we have Bellisario Contreras. He's a manager. He's not on the table here. He's online, so just for you to know. Bellisario Contreras, manager cybersecurity program at the OACS. And then we have also Valmikki Singh, manager director, National Frequency Unit here in Guyana. So with them, we're going to have a discussion. So first of all, let's start with Bellisario Contreras, given that he's online. Just a few seconds, let's say, just introduce yourself and especially what your organization is doing. And that's the exact theme that I'm going to ask all the panelists as well. So just very briefly regarding your own person and what your organization is doing, and then from then we will be starting discussions regarding cybersecurity. So Mr. Bellisario Contreras, are you there?
Hello, good afternoon to everyone. Do you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation to all of you. And it's a pleasure to be with you today. Cybersecurity, as you were saying, it's maybe one of the most pressing issues. I understand that there is a joke people today in the audience. The thing that some of the things that we want to share with you, the OAS has been working on cyber issues for more than a decade, but cybersecurity incidents or cyber attacks are not new. I'm not sure if you are looking at the screen, but there are some of the major threats that have happened over the past years. But cyber incidents have been occurring for more than three decades now. There are different attackers, motivations, and targets, being the financial sector, the government, and of course citizens, the main targets. We need to be very careful about who are the attackers, and when the media and governments, for example, mention there are hackers or hacktivists, we need to be very careful that not all hackers or hacktivist organizations are necessarily like bad hackers or bad organizations. Sorry. Please.
Yes.
One of the things that actually I want to share with you, and I'm not going through many slides, and actually to share with the audience, and is this post from The Economist from June this year, and is that the data is the world's most valuable resource. If you see the top companies around the world, Google, Amazon, Uber, Microsoft, Facebook, and Tesla, everything relies on their data. And actually, startups right now, everything is based on data. And in order for these companies to be successful, they need to secure and guarantee the integrity and the availability of this data. Therefore, cybersecurity is essential, not just for these companies, but for every company around the world. A company like Maersk, which is in the maritime domain, a couple of weeks ago, when the Pattaya ransomware incident happened, reported that around $300 million, they were affected by around $300 million because just one day that they were not able to operate. These are other incidents and numbers that basically states that cyber incidents are going up in the region. More than 70% say based on internal data that we have. And from the OAS, what we are trying to do is focus on policy development, capacity building based on training, and research and development. On policy development, working with countries on the development of their national strategies. And recently, we are going to start working on cooperation and confidence building measure. The first meeting is going to happen in December. Basically, we are going to work with member states providing technical support on this. On capacity building, there is a lot of training and support the development of national certs. We are aware that Guyana has a incident response capacity. We provide law enforcement training. There is a platform for threat intelligence and information sharing for all public or governmental certs, which is called CSERT Americas. And there are a variety of technical and strategic courses, not just for government, but actually for private sector and civil society. And research and outreach, there is a variety of reports out there. Right now, these are the countries that have national strategies adopted. We are working with these others. Actually, Costa Rica is launching their strategy this week, and we are starting to work with Honduras, Belize, and Barbados over the next year. Again, for all the colleagues, well, this is a topic that for sure is going to be in the agenda of the governments, the industry, and of course the citizens for the coming years. Important to understand that there is not a universal definition on what is cybersecurity. There is not universal instruments right now. As the criminals and cybersecurity or cyber incidents are transnationals, the message is to work together to provide response to cyber incidents. The response of working together should be for the governments, between the governments, the private sectors, and the civil society, and everyone has a shared responsibility on this. This is not just government, this is not just private sector, and we should start putting a little piece on the bigger scenario.
Okay, thank you very much, Bellisario. Basically, Bellisario has to leave around 4 o'clock, so that's why I gave him the opportunity to say a few more words, but thank you very much. So let's continue with Bevel Wooding. Just give, of course, we have heard about yourself, but just give a very brief introduction with what you and your organization is doing with respect to cybersecurity, and after that we will be having a discussion.
Thank you, Shernon. As Stephen Lee mentioned earlier, CaribNOG, the Caribbean Network Operators Group, has been involved in securing Caribbean networks from its inception. So we have been paying a very close attention to the vulnerabilities that exist across the region as it relates to cyber incidents, cyber attacks, and so on. In 2012, the US FBI director at the time made this statement that I think is very applicable to our discussion this afternoon, and that is that he said there are two types of companies: those that have been hacked and those that will be hacked. And I think that pretty much sums up the reason why a discussion on cybersecurity is so important for any country in the Caribbean or around the world that has anything connected to the internet. In other words, all of us. And if we put a scan on the Caribbean, what we have found as CaribNOG in looking at and talking to and interfacing with our members who are, by definition, administrators and operators of networks, is there is a startling degree of awareness concerning the nature of the types of attacks. You still have people in the Caribbean who believe that, well, we're so small and our economies are so non-substantial in a global context that attackers would not find any interest in our networks or in our countries. What we have found is exactly the opposite. We are soft targets, and soft targets represent two wonderful things for hackers. One, wonderful places to go and test your cyber hacking skills, knowing that in some countries in the region, and I suspect from my last check that Guyana is amongst them, you can't have a cyber crime if the act is not covered by your laws. You can have a cyber attack, you can have a cyber incident, but it only becomes a crime when you've broken a law. And so a lot of the attacks on Caribbean networks fall into that zone where something bad has happened, but the legislation has not caught up with the evolution in attack profile. So that points to the second deficiency that we've seen in the region as it relates to cyber attack, cyber crime, and cyber security, and that is legislation to properly treat with and allow security officers and law enforcement officers to respond to cyber incidents. The other thing that you'll hear as a recurring theme with cyber crime and cyber security is the issue of the transnational, transborder nature of cyber crime. So a criminal could sit from a room somewhere in Eastern Europe or North America or the Far East or Middle East and perpetrate a crime or perpetrate an attack in the Caribbean. To even begin to try to find out and to treat with that attacker, you have to cooperate with other agencies outside of the territory and outside of the jurisdiction. And we have found that even in 2017, there's still, again, a startling degree of lack or absence of coordination or insufficient coordination among security agencies to help deal with these kinds of attacks in a timely manner. There's also a talent shortage. We have people who are administering significant networks who have learned by rote. Another more senior network administrator may have shown how to set up a server or how to configure some kind of system. But in terms of some of the increasing sophistication of cyber attacks, the kinds of strategies and the kinds of mitigating practices that have to apply to network or systems administration remains outside of the realm of competence for a number of systems administrators. And then the last point I'll make with regard to the profile that we have seen in the region is there are just some people who refuse to believe that this is anything serious. The ostrich syndrome. And these are real concerns for us as a group, a volunteer-based group in the region, looking at securing Caribbean networks. And we feel that the counterpoint to these things are education, awareness, multi-stakeholder, again, engagement. And what tends to happen, and what CaribNOG has found itself doing recently, is if you keep this conversation only amongst the technical group, you're not going to have a reasonable or sustainable solution to it. And so we've begun outreaches to law enforcement agencies, to governments, so that there is awareness of the technical underpinnings, as well as awareness of some of the policy and legislative requirements that are needed to secure and safeguard networks. And that's where things are, Shernon, where we understand the nature of the problem. We understand that it is not sufficient to be afraid of the vulnerabilities and malpractices in cyberspace. You have to be informed, and you have to be aware of what some of the best practices are for securing networks. And so we have committed in our 2018 agenda to double down on our efforts to bring about that kind of training. On Thursday, we'll actually be treating specifically with the issue of cybersecurity at the CaribNOG 14 session here in Guyana.
Okay, thank you very much, Bevel. And then we would like to move on with Muriana. Please discuss with us, let's say, what the National Data Management Authority is doing with respect to, or what you're planning to do with respect to cybersecurity.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. The National Data Management Authority is responsible for executing the e-government strategy or the government program, and it falls under the Ministry of Public Telecommunications. Now, I'm cybersecurity manager at NDMA, and we're basically responsible for ensuring the security of the e-government network. Now, the network is really intended to interconnect all government agencies and ministries, as well as we connect schools, as you would have heard the Honorable Ministers mentioning this morning. We would have connected a number of secondary schools. We would have also established ICT hubs. And so the focus is on monitoring the network to ensure that it remains more or less resilient to any cyber threat, and also to be able to detect if any threat is occurring on the network and try to mitigate those. So we have recently established a cybersecurity operations center, and we are currently implementing different measures to ensure that we can properly monitor the network for cyber threats. So that is, in a nutshell, what we're doing. We also involved in providing training. As our colleague had just mentioned, training is one of the key issues. One of the things that we have observed is that cybersecurity training is not provided in our schools. It's not provided at the university level in Guyana nor in the Caribbean. And so anybody who wants to benefit from cybersecurity training definitely have to go to a university in North America, in Europe, or some other part of the world. What happens is that when they go there, they stay. And, and so therefore, we have to find ways in which we can provide, improve the capacity of persons who are out of university, give them the opportunity, if they want to pursue a career in cybersecurity, to come on board to help learn how you can monitor networks. And so I've recently gotten a few persons added to the department, and so we're currently ensuring that they're equipped with the necessary know-how and tools so that they can at least manage and monitor the network. Part of what we're doing also is that we have made the internet available to a number of schools. And whilst we need to ensure that everybody have access to the internet, we also see it as important in order to ensure the safety of the children when they go online to browse. So we have some filtering we do to ensure that certain websites or certain key applications that might try to more or less draw them into different types of child online issues, we want to ensure that well, once they're on the network, that they won't be exposed to that kind of issue. And so we are actively ensuring that they can have a safe online experience. We've recently established a technical working group, and so there's a cybersecurity technical working group that began in March of this year. And we do recognize that within the government ministries and agencies, we want to have a unified approach towards cybersecurity issues. And so we're looking at setting policies that can be embraced by all of government. So we're looking at what's happening in our ministries and our agencies and trying to put measures in place, trying to work as a team to try to develop policies that will be applicable for our ministries and agencies. So that, in a nutshell, are some of the things that we're engaging at this point in time.
Okay, thank you very much, Muriana. I would like to move on now with Valmikki. Please explain to us what are being done or you're planning to do at the National Frequency Management Unit with respect to cybersecurity.
Thank you very much. I'm sure most of you would be wondering why is the National Frequency Management Unit doing on a panel discussion talking about cybersecurity. Anyway, the NFMU represented or has been represented in Guyana at the ITU, the International Telecommunications Union, which is the UN specialized agency for ICTs. And cybersecurity was one of the things that was recognized as of great importance many years ago. And during those times, well, we didn't have a specialized ministry as we do now, dealing with telecoms and so on. So we, to a large extent, was filling the breach. Because we recognized that it was a really, really important matter, we actually have been pushing, or were pushing, for Guyana to get more involved in addressing cybersecurity issues. In fact, we heard earlier the CTU, which is the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, one of the activities that they were organizing was the HIPCAR, and one of the model or draft legislation and policy that HIPCAR dealt with was cybersecurity. In fact, I participated and I chaired, I think, at least one or two the discussions on cybersecurity. So we were actually involved in drafting the legislation and the policy. As the presenter acknowledged that, sadly, in some cases, those drafts were not really taken up across the region, I guess for various reasons. One of the, and in fact, we've heard earlier that in dealing with cybersecurity, collaboration is of extreme importance. And not only collaboration, but we have to get collaboration with everyone involved. So some years ago, the ITU actually had an alliance. They called it ITU Impact Alliance. And IMPACT is the International Multilateral Partnership Against Cyber Threats. Guyana, well, based on our work with the ITU, we had recommended, and Guyana did join the ITU Impact Alliance, which I think at the moment it has 153 member countries that have joined. I think it is probably the largest collaborative effort. And these are the kinds of institutions that we need to rely on when dealing with transnational crimes that cybersecurity actually fits very much into. Because as was pointed out, a criminal can execute an attack from one country via another country into a third country, and at the click of a finger, change the countries and go through another. So by the time you actually realize that you got hacked or attacked, you begin to respond, it's gone to another country. So in cases like those, you need to be able to send out alerts and warnings and get collaboration from all the countries. So that is one of the things that I think that we all need to look at, this ITU Impact Alliance. And I think in 2012, when the NFMU, in observing Girls in ICT, International Day for Girls in ICT, this again was an ITU initiative, and the NFMU had commenced organizing events on behalf of Guyana. And we recognized that we were encouraging youngsters to get online. And we recognized immediately that cybersecurity is one of the areas that we need to get them more aware about, because we don't have our little kids tell them to go walk on the road without teaching them about road safety. In fact, they need to learn about road safety before they start using roadways. It's the same principle we believe that with persons using the internet, we need to educate them. And we would have heard a little comments about that from NDMA. We need to educate them about the pitfalls and the threats and so on about the internet before they actually start using it. So one of the things we've been pushing for is awareness about the threats, and we focus more on child online protection, and we try to push that as much as possible. The ITU has quite a lot of information on child online protection. So that is an area that we wish to push. And one last point I would like to make at this point is that I believe that cybersecurity should be something that is a compulsory topic, either in an IT class or somewhere for every single student. So because whether we like it or not, they will have access to tablets, they will have access to phones, and they're going online. I heard a very disturbing story yesterday only, 2 days ago, sorry, where there was a conversation with two little children. And this was a 4-year-old. I think the aunt of the 4-year-old who was playing with her other cousin, and she was asked to come outside, come out from the bedroom and come outside and play. So the 4-year-old said, "Why is auntie telling us that? It's not like we're going to have sex or something." This is a 4 years old using that in that context. And obviously they wonder, how is it that a 4-year-old can actually speak about something like that? And when they did investigate it, the child was using somebody else's, they were looking at YouTube, the kids programs and stuff, and somehow or the other, these cartoons that are X-rated cartoons actually got onto the stuff. So, I mean, that is something that we might not recognize or realize, but it is actually happening. And we might feel in Guyana, things like that don't happen. At the same forum I heard where we had 2 minors were actually met and seduced on Facebook, and it led to actually they were both raped. And I mean, my point is that it's very, very bad, but I don't know if the criminal justice system, the police force, has the ability to now go into those devices that were used and to be able to track the person down. So I just thought I should raise those issues to demonstrate, because I feel very strongly about child online protection. And I think it's something that we all should try to ensure that we protect our children when they're online. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Valmikki. We will be focusing a bit on the threats and also what can be done, let's say, to address these challenges that we're seeing. So thank you very much for all of you for the basically introduction. We have started to talk about cybersecurity, but we didn't really define what is cybersecurity. There are a lot of definitions out there with respect to cybersecurity, but in general, we can say that cybersecurity refers to preventive methods to protect information from being stolen, compromised, or attacked in some other way. So we see 3 key words. We see stolen, we see compromised, or attacked. And there is also something else. Cybersecurity challenges can be mapped, let's say, in 3 areas. First of all, we look at what we call the type of action. So here we're taking a look at for what is taking place. For example, data interception, illegal access, spyware, malware, nowadays ransomware, data corruption, sabotage, denial of service, and et cetera, et cetera. And the second area, we take a look at what we call the type of perpetrator. So here we're taking a look at the person, the human being, committing the act. So we are taking a look here, for example, at the criminals, anarchists, hackers or crackers, terrorists, secret services, and sometimes we can even put, let's say, governments in this list, because sometimes they also do these kind of things. And the third area, when we are mapping cybersecurity topics, we look at a type of target. So here we can take a look at the person being hacked or whatever. Could be just an individual, just a person like you and me. It could be a private company. It could be civil society organizations. It could be, for example, critical infrastructure. So with that, I would like now to, now that we know, for example, how cybersecurity areas are being, let's say, mapped, and we have more or less a definition, there are a lot of other definitions out there as well. but we are just using this for the purpose of this session. So what are the threats that we are seeing, let's say, regionally, locally, and globally? So I think for globally and regionally, maybe Bevel can focus a bit more on that. And then with our local presenters, Valmikki and Muriana, maybe you guys can focus a bit more on the local threats that you are seeing. And I think, Valmikki, you did mention this 4 years kit, because he is a kit.
Yes.
And maybe you can also focus on other challenges that you're seeing, for example, in Guyana in this regard.